Through the Noise with your host, Ernesto Glucksmann.
Jerry, thanks for joining me on the show. I much appreciate this. Jerry Schwartz, you're the Senior Director of Energy and Environmental Policy at AFPA, the American Forest and Paper Association. And I had your boss on, I guess not that long ago, maybe, well, it feels like ages ago if it's more than a month during these times.
Right, exactly.
But Heidi was on, and she was really, it's just interesting to talk to her how she sort of managed, in the association as a whole, and she said I had to talk to you because you are the researcher, so you get to see the ins and outs, the data that comes through things, and I guess it kind of coincided with the release of your new sustainability report, right?
Yeah, we released the report in July, which, like you, does seem like a long time ago already. So it was our 2020 report, and the report is based on 2018 data. And so it's how well did our members do in the year 2018. The report is based on information and data that we collect from them, plus some other information from government agencies and other sources like that. And we've been doing sustainability reports actually since 2010. So we've kind of got this down. We really were very pleased with this report, the way it came out. And, the big news in the report was the fact that the main purpose of the report is to track our sustainability goals. So we've got a Better Practices, Better Planet 2020 initiative, where we had set out back in 2011, 6 quantifiable and verifiable sustainability goals. And so this report, with a target year of 2020. And so this report is like the other reports we've issued every other year. It tracks and reports on how well are we doing against those goals. And so like I said, this is 2018 data, so we will have one more report that will be issued to be the final wrap up, if you would, of how we did on our goals. But the good news is we're making great progress, and we've actually met or exceeded 4 out of the 6 goals. And so those, we can go into those right now if you like, but we one by one, we had a greenhouse gas goal, and we had set, actually our second greenhouse gas goal was a 20% reduction from a 2005 baseline, and we met that, and we exceeded it with a 23.2% reduction. So we were really happy with that one, especially because that was our second goal that we had set. We've set a safety goal, which is really one of the key issues these days, even pre-COVID. And I know you said you talked to Heidi, our CEO. Mm-hmm. Even pre-COVID, safety was a huge issue for us. And now, of course, with COVID, the safety of our employees is the most important thing that we're interested in, of course, and working on. But we had set a goal back in 2011 to improve our reportable incident rate with OSHA. And the goal was 25%. And we're happy to say that we've exceeded that with 38.4%. So that's pretty good. We've also got a certified fiber goal, or a forestry goal, sustainable forestry goal. And so we've got 2 aspects of that goal. And the one that we've been talking the most about is that we had a goal to increase the amount of fiber that we procure from certified sourcing systems. And we're up to over 99% of that. So that's just an indication that our members are really, through their procurement practices, achieving and helping achieve sustainable forest management. The other goal that the 2 that we haven't hit yet, we've got recycling, where we've got a 70% goal, and we're up to 66.2. We've been over 63% since at least 2009. We've doubled the recycling rate since 1990. So we're doing great. We're not there yet, but we're making progress. Our energy efficiency goal, I should have hit that one before I got to recycling. The energy efficiency goal, we've exceeded that one as well. So that's, we're up to 13.3%, and the goal is a 10% improvement. So we've improved our energy efficiency significantly. And then the last one, which was kind of my favorite, because among the other things I do at AFPA, I'm also the water guy, and that's what I've done since the beginning. And so we set a goal to reduce our industry's water use by 12%. And we've hit 6.9% reduction on that goal. And frankly, that goal is probably not going to be met. And we can talk about why that is, if you like, and what that might mean for a new water goal. But that kind of rounds out where we are on the goal. So 4 out of 6, great progress. And we'll have one more report where we'll wrap up the whole program.
Oh man, there's so many interesting spots to want to jump into on this because first of all, it's something you guys set the goals for in 2010, right? So,
Right.
and you have to project, okay, in a decade, what could we achieve on,
Right.
well, areas of complexity that's like, safety is its own world. Like, well, what do you do to try to make things safer? Like, what can you do? Processes, better training, better equipment with better safety features, all of that. How do you project what the world's going to be like 10 years from now, right? When you first sat
Yeah.
down. Can you speak to a little bit of that? I mean, this sounds like these were great goals to be met, and clearly you guys didn't, make it too easy on yourselves because you didn't meet all the goals, right? If the
Right.
criticism's there for that.
Yeah.
How do these guys sit down? And by the way, I should ask just to get a fair concept. It's the logging process and the mills that process the logs, or some aspect of what do you guys represent?
Yeah, that's a good question. So we are the National Trade Association for the paper and wood products industry, but our membership really is focused on pulp, paper-based packaging, and tissue.
Okay.
So
Once
we
it's
do represent more in the
process.
mill,
Okay.
but we do of course have a forestry goal. Why? Because we have a big influence on the forestry practices that occur for the fiber that we procure. So we did adopt sustainable procurement principles and made that a condition of membership for those people that procure wood from the forest, because we recognize we can really have an important influence on sustainable forest management practices.
That's helpful to picture. So can we jump maybe into that particular goal in the certified fiber? I mean, I presume there's this certification process aims at the fact that, well, when you cut down a tree, it takes a long time for a new tree to be grown in its place. So you should be in some way managing that process where you're not just laying to waste large tracts of land without balancing the future
Right.
growth to kind of get it back. But what is that certification process like?
Yeah, so there are three different primary certification systems in the U.S. Sustainable Forestry Initiative, Forest Stewardship Council, and American Forest Foundation, American Tree Farm System. And they're all approaching things differently, but the basic notion is they have standards, they update their standards every X number of years. And it's to do exactly what you're thinking about. How do we ensure sustainable forest management is occurring? So best management practices to protect water resources. What are the right logging practices? What about habitat issues like that? So that's the idea, is to make sure that when the fiber is procured by our members, we know and we feel comfortable that sustainable forest management occurred. And so there were two aspects to the goal. And one is to recognize the fact that not a huge portion of the lands in the US are actually certified, but that doesn't mean sustainable forest management isn't occurring in the other places where the land is not certified. So that's what the procurement system part of the goal is about. We want to make sure that we're procuring fiber through a system that's been certified by a third party to ensure that sustainable forest management practices have occurred, logger training, et cetera, as I said. And then the other part of the goal is to increase the amount of fiber from certified forest lands. So there are two dimensions to it.
And I presume, given that it's such a high, I presume that it's such a high number, 99% are coming from one of these certifying systems. That makes the certification valuable, right, for landowners and maybe loggers and so forth. They're like, well, if we can get certified for this track, then we can sell it into our customer base, right? And so that kind
Yeah,
of commitment creates that standard. It validates the standards that exist, right?
exactly. And there's always been discussion about how much more of a premium should there be for certified paper or for certified forest products. People, have discussed that on and off over the years. One reality, if you would, though, is that actually most of the fiber that we purchase does not come from larger companies. It really comes from what we call mom and pops, of the small independent landowners. And actually getting certified is a challenge for those folks because it costs money, right? And if these folks are not very large companies and they're only harvesting infrequently, then it becomes a bit of a challenge to justify the expense. So a lot of what our companies are doing is working with some of these landowner groups to actually make it easier to remove some of the barriers for cost and administrative expense to get more land certified. So that's an important part of what a number of our companies are up to.
Got it. And so then I guess on the energy efficiency, I mean, this is like intense, you need big, factories that can process. It's getting the pulp or creating the paper products is not an easy thing. It uses heat, it uses electricity. I mean, it's an energy intensive resource to do it. So, but predicting like how will we get 10 years from now, what's the likelihood of new machines being ever more efficient? It's hard to know, right? It's just, I don't, how did your members sort of come to that? Like, can we get to 13%?
Yeah. So your question is a good one, and it actually applies to all the goals, not just to the energy
Right.
efficiency goals. I might just answer it a little generically, and then I can jump into energy efficiency. But basically, the first thing you have to do, of course, is get everybody in agreement that we're going to adopt the goals. And so that took a little bit of time, and that was based on some stakeholder meetings that we had.
You mean get ordinarily competitors to come to an agreement on something? That's
Well, so first of all, of course, we're always mindful of antitrust. So you use that word agreement. So you got to be careful.
Oh, you get prickly there too.
Right. So we always have to keep an eye out for that. And of course, we were mindful of that along the way. What we agreed to do, though, was what everybody agreed to do is agree to a set of goals that each company would agree to work towards and help us achieve, but they would do that differently, right? So each company is going to make progress on the goals differently. And ultimately, this became a board level project, and we did get input from stakeholders that care about sustainability. And now you get to the question that you've asked. So how do you actually do this? And once we determined what are the key areas people care about, water, energy, greenhouse gas, forestry, once we figured that out, which today people would call doing a materiality assessment, we didn't call it that back then, but once we figured out, here are the areas on which we want to focus, now how do we actually set a target? And luckily, of course, we have experts in our companies, and we have committees in our companies that are dedicated to each one of these areas. So it also just so happens that I happen to be the energy guy at AFPA as well. So I staff the energy committee. And so what do? We do? We go to the energy committee and say, you guys are the experts, and let's do some analysis. Let's do some projecting forward. What are the technologies that may be coming forward? What are reasonable expenditures that the industry might make for energy efficiency? What's the system? What's the metric? We looked at some Department of Energy programs, Environmental Protection Agency programs. How do they calculate energy efficiency? And that's how you do it. So that's how the process works. It's collaborative. It takes iteration. It takes reporting back to the board on a regular basis to make sure we're on track. It takes the board telling us, yes, you're on track, and maybe you need to push a little bit more here or there. So that's how we do it. And we did that for really all the areas.
For every area.
Yeah.
Because measuring, brings into question, well, how do we measure this for every goal, every aspect of it has to be, so is it the question of, is anybody actually measuring this? Was in 2010, did you start like, all right, well, who's actually measuring these types of things? And then who can we ask if they'd be willing to share how they collect that data?
Yeah.
That seems like a tremendous amount of time to figure out.
Yeah. So we had a huge advantage in this process, and that is we adopted environment and health safety principles in 1998. And we made as a condition of membership that you will provide us information in these subject areas. So the good news was we had already been collecting energy data. The data enabled us to calculate greenhouse gas emissions. We did have to do a separate survey for forestry, and we had been, of course, reporting recycling progress for quite a while. So from a member company perspective, if we can come up with a metric that doesn't require new reporting to AFPA, that's huge, right? So that's great because they're not really excited about us adding additional reporting burdens on the companies for these goals. So the good news, as they said, was we actually had data for energy and greenhouse gas emissions and safety that we were able to build on. And having that head start and a kind of a baseline to begin with, that was huge. And then, as I say, you then still have the question of what metric do you want to measure and how do you calculate that? But again, looking around at other programs and things like that, it helped us figure out, here's the metric and here's how we're going to measure it.
I mean, and I imagine that's half the work of an association, that goes figuring out, what is the data that we actually already have coming in? What, if anything, we would want to aggregate? Would the members be okay submitting that data? Is it easy for them to collect enough that's not disruptive to their operations? And if it is a significant piece of data that would require some investment, can you justify it to them, like why it's really important to move into this next level? That must be a lot of ongoing conversation that happens back and forth at every stage. How did you organize progress? Like, how do you know you were progressing in any one particular spot? Was it, that's something I wonder.
Yeah, so I mean, that's the question, right? I should also have stated that another important part of that process that helps coalesce people around what you're talking about, right? Because that's what we do in an association. That's our job. Our job is to coalesce people around public policy positions, or in this case, goals that will help us in our public policy advocacy, and get agreement and get over the finish line. One of the important pieces of this process is going out and asking stakeholders, important stakeholders, what is your opinion on where we as an industry ought to be going? Can you give us some guidance from your perspective? What will benefit the industry going forward? So we did exactly that. We did go to environmental organizations. We went to customers. We went to government agencies, academic organizations, think tanks, checked in with the international associations. And once you've identified what your quote material areas are, what the subject areas are going to be, and you've started getting an idea of a draft goal, then you bounce it off the stakeholders, and that input also helps coalesce the members around where they need to go. We did do member surveys. We did ask our members for some of the issues to project where do they think they will be in 2020, 10 years out. So it really is a collaborative process where all these data sources are brought together, put into the hopper, and ultimately, as I say, that's what we do as a trade association, is we find that area where we can coalesce around a certain endpoint, or in this case, the goals that we adopt.
The goals, and sort of distill the most essential aspects that everybody can, or that you can get most of your members to simply say, okay, fine, I'll do it, because that's also the hard part. These are voluntary organizations. They can leave your membership if they don't like where you're going with it, right? And that's the ever, I would say, the back pressure on any particular direction that you can take as a group, right? You need to get them to agree, compromise in some of this stuff.
Exactly.
How did anything, I mean, this started in 2010, but you were obviously collecting data since 98. And, let's just say technology has evolved since then. Has anything improve the way you're able to collect data in recent times? Is anything submitted more in an automated fashion based on systems that these companies use to just track, manage their business? Or are you still just using the surveys and getting spreadsheets of things?
Yeah. So yes, of course, you're absolutely right. Of course, it has evolved over time, and one of our goals in this process is to make it as minimize the burden as best as we can. So, and to some extent, it depends on the company, right? So smaller companies may still send us a spreadsheet or just, go on the website. We do have a members only website where we collect this information. So we can collect it that way. Some companies take advantage of that. Some companies, frankly, have restructured their data management collection so it more closely aligns with ours. And so that was an indication that we were on the right track, that these are the kinds of data that companies ought to be collecting, and that these are the valuable data. And so it's been an evolution over time, but we've done what we can do to make the system and make the process as easy as we can. And like I say, some companies have really got it down where their data collection is much easier because they're tracking what we're doing. And obviously we've changed our processes to make sure that we're not imposing any burdens on the companies either.
Gotcha. And so maybe could give us an example. I mean, maybe it's the energy efficiency. Like, how is the data collected there? Or how does that get distilled into the report?
Sure. So our survey asks the companies to tell us in, let's say, calendar year 2018, how many BTUs of energy did you consume from wood, biomass, natural gas, purchased electricity, coal? So we ask the companies to give us those data points. And then and again, those are any company, as you noted, we are energy intensive. So any company in our industry is tracking that kind of information because it has huge cost implications, right? So they give us this data, and then we do quality assurance, quality control, of course, looking for outliers and things like that. And then we roll up the data, and that's how we do it. So a reasonably painless process, right? We're asking them to give us data that they already collect. We check it out, we make sure it's good data, and we roll it up, and that's how we collectively figure out how is the AFPA membership doing. We never report individual company performance. We don't report it publicly. We don't tell one company how the other company is doing. That confidentiality piece, of course, is important, and we had to develop that over time. But that's how we do it. So in some respects, that piece has become somewhat painless just because people have got the system set up to give us that information every other year.
That's interesting. You, as the association, serve as the de-anonymizer of the data, right? Because it would be, if you were to report individual companies' numbers, then that's competitive information that, that would be leaked, or that would give it an unfair advantage to another competitor going, oh, I see what region they're coming from or how much they're spending on BTUs or whatever. So by being the trusted source, not necessarily a third-party government agency or something, but being the association that they're all members of, presumably that is the spot they trust the most. So giving you that information, they know it would be in good hands to be distilled in aggregate for the industry, right?
We have to ensure that.
How do you do the data integrity check stuff? How do you make sure, like, hey, that not somebody's trying to exaggerate a little bit, that they've been more efficient than they may have been, as an example? Like, what do you do for that?
Yeah. So again, the beauty of these data collection for some of the data sets is we're not asking them to do something new. So for instance, water. So we have a water goal to reduce the amount of water we use. How are we going to measure that? Well, it turns out that we replace 88% of the water that we withdraw. More people have better and rigorous data sets for the amount of water discharged been withdrawn, right? Now, why do I say that? Because all our members have water permits, and every month they're required to report the amount of water they discharge. So this goes to a government agency, either a state agency or EPA. It's subject to penalties and even criminal penalties if you fudge the numbers, right? So we've got, and same with some of the energy data that is collected by the Department of Energy or the Energy Information Agency, right? Administration. So there's a level of trust that just comes with the kind of data that we're getting, and a level of data integrity, because we know these members would be crazy to try to fudge the numbers that they're sending us, because they're sending the same data to government agencies. So that's one aspect of the data quality that we do.
Got it. I mean that they would be risking their business, their enterprise.
Right.
So why make that the issue? Just, especially when you're trying to actually help them demonstrate that they are improving energy resources and efficiencies in other areas, right? The question I have, more generically, you've been on this odyssey, I guess, for a long while, Jerry. Like, what has surprised you in your role over time about the industry that you probably wouldn't have noticed if you weren't in this position that you're in?
Yeah, that's a good question. So when I first got there, and I won't tell you how long ago that was, but
okay.
I'll just say it was a while ago. We were very siloed. All right, so AFPA was siloed, and to some extent, the industry was more siloed, just the way they operated. Now, on the one hand, the companies were integrated, more fully integrated than they are today. But the way we worked, I think, was an indication that the overarching umbrella of sustainability was not that well developed when I first showed up, or even as we were developing we developed EH&S principles in the late 90s. And at the same time, we developed the Sustainable Forestry Initiative.
ENH principles?
Sorry, Environment, Health, and Safety principles.
Okay.
EH&S principles, sorry. But they were not connected in any way. And so the one thing that I've really observed over the time that I've been at AFPA is how this umbrella of sustainability has integrated the things that we do. And it's, just our notion of moving from EH&S, Environment, Health, and Safety reports, to sustainability reports in 2010, and recognizing that we are seeing this trend in the companies of embodying sustainability as a much more organizing principle and a core principle. And so now, it's all our members talk about sustainability. It's really important what they're doing. Members themselves are setting sustainability goals. Members themselves are talking about our Better Practices, Better Planet program. So that's really been a really interesting phenomenon that I've been able to observe from my time at AFPA, is this kind of disconnected notion of the pieces of sustainability, which we frankly had. I mean, they were all there. Safety was there. Environmental protection was always there. Energy was there. Forestry was there. It was never integrated together. And now the companies it's all integrated. It's all embedded in what the companies do. So that's been a really nice thing to see.
Is that like it back? I guess if you would go back in the old days, like these were just, doing business in a sustainable manner meant you want your employees to be not harming themselves in the process, and you want to reduce your energy costs because it costs a lot of money. So you're always looking at that stuff, but there was no integrated or broader way of reporting on it. Everybody just sort of maybe did it kind of their own way, or just did it as a process of running a business. Just didn't know that this could be rolled up into industry sustainability reporting, right?
Yeah, it's a good way of putting it. That I like to say we were doing sustainability before it was a thing. I mean, that's what we did. If we didn't manage those resources, the water resource, the forest resource, we're out of business. If we don't take care of our employees, we're out of business, right? So, and sustainability is not just environment, right? I mean, it's economic and social as well. So if we're not doing those things, we're not making a profit. If we're not making a profit, we're not investing in our people and in our communities. So they all have to fit together. They were all there to begin with, but they're just fitting together a lot more now.
And on the full fitting together, I mean, is there something you could describe that sort of what's compelling them now after they've done through these, you're almost done with this 10-year initiative. What would you say your members would say about all of this effort, in terms of how it's impacted their business? If you could, speak for them. Obviously, everybody's different.
It's always risky business, right?
I know.
But well, I guess I don't. I'll tell you what. So what I can do is I don't have to speak for them, but what I can tell you is what their actions are telling me. So
Okay.
we are very close to being done with 2020, right? So we could all just wash our hands and say, great, hey, look, hey, we met 4 to 6 goals. Maybe we'll hit 8, 6 out of 6. But that's not what we're doing. What we're doing, and we're doing it right now, is we're working on the next set of goals, right? So it's the next set of goals for 2030. And again, the process is very similar, but there's this board level commitment at the top of the companies that we do need to take this sustainability story to the next step. And just like we were convinced by our stakeholders and otherwise that new goals back then would be a good step to maintain our leadership, differentiate our products, and ensure our license to operate, the members are saying, now you need to do 2030. And so clearly they are saying, and they believe that this is a part of what they are and what we need to do. So I guess that's a good indication of how they look at it.
Now they sell these products in bulk to distributors, retailers, or whoever out, beyond that. Have they, in their conversations with their customers, what filters back into sustainability now? Has anything changed? Has there been more requests for better view of what you're doing as an industry or as a specific company for sustainability?
Yeah, so that is one of the things that's changed. And it does come from, of course, customers are key stakeholders, obviously. But that is one of the things that's changed in the way we are addressing the new goals. And that is, it's a little bit more of an outward focus than just the existing goals, which really, as you correctly pointed out, are about what's going on mostly at the mill, what's going on mostly inside. We are broadening that a little bit. And so having the question about the customers is right on, right? So there's a lot of discussion these days about products and how sustainable is the actual product itself. And certainly with the questions around plastics, there's been a huge increase in the focus on the characteristics of the product. What is it made out of? What happens to that product after it's used? And so we've internalized that, and one of the goals we're working on for 2030 is what we call our sustainability of our products goal, or our goal to advance the circularity of our value chain. I don't know if we could talk about this notion of the circular economy, but it is this focus on the products and is it made of a renewable material? How much renewable energy was used to produce these products, things like that. So it really is focusing more on the products and taking a broader view of sustainability. And that does obviously come from customers.
And that comes from customers. And so can we talk a little bit about the sort of circular economy? I still I have a rather surface understanding of that concept, because it's difficult to I would imagine quantify when it's actually meaningful, right? So like, I'll give you an example by that. Like, I had somebody from the Plastics Institute, and their argument was, well, you want to put plastic if you're going to put it in the ground as part of your sewer system, because it'll last 100 years or hopefully more, which means you won't have to dig it up the way we used to every 30 if you put cast iron or some other more material that is more likely to degrade in the ground, right? So there's like a good reason for using plastics there in that type of role, right, that they would highlight. So I also wonder about paper products. I guess some of the stuff you could put it into composting or other that concept, but what's the energy usage in total? Like, how do we know we're applying the products in the direction that we want if we're aiming for, I guess, what a circular economy is? So let's just start with the circular economy concept. What's that? What does that mean to you, Jerry?
Yeah, so everybody kind of goes back to the Ellen MacArthur Foundation definition, if you would, and it's really the notion of designing products in a way that they can be reused and recycled more often, and in a way that regenerates natural resources. So there's not a lot of words there, but obviously there's a lot there. So the designing the products in a way so they can be reused or recycled or composted, so that they are recyclable and compostable, right? So those are important pieces of it. The Recycling Partnership has kind of tracking some investments and has noted that the industry has spent over $4 billion to bring on new ability to reuse and recycle materials. And so that's an important part of this notion of the circular economy, or as we like to say, just creating a circular value chain, if you would. So that's an important part of it. We, I believe, have a leg up in this realm of the circular economy because of that focus at the end of regenerating natural resources. The notion that underlies the circular economy is that we've got finite resources, and if the world continues to use them at the rate at which we're using them, we're going to run out of these finite resources. But we have a renewable resource, right? So we've got more trees in the US today than we ever did, right? Well, not ever, but then we have from 50 years ago. And so we have the ability to regenerate that resource, and we do. And as a matter of fact, of course, as we discussed earlier, that's part of the sustainable forest management and the standards for sustainable forest management. So those are the things that it means for our industry.
And the idea then is to just the nature of our business, we want to figure out ways to capture that data, report on it, provide it into our product designs, deliver it, and go, see, this is a good product for this new role if you're looking to buy products from a more renewable source, raw source, right? But to figure out what to put on that label, to figure out what it all costs, that is the tremendous effort that has to be walked through carefully over years, because you just, I would presume the industry didn't put in $4 billion in new investments without some sense that they're going to get some of that back, right. Or that there is a customer base that really does care about purchasing that kind of material, right? It's an investment for future orders for profit. So it sounds like should be an exciting time for this industry. I mean, even though this industry's probably been around for a long time, right?
Yeah, it is. I mean, it's very exciting. So first of all, I mean, the immediate time of the whole COVID time, getting designated as essential and recognizing that we make essential products and we're essential industry, of course, that was really important and kind of a level of excitement that, frankly, of course, nobody
we haven't even talked about that.
Right. But looking forward to that, looking past that, and a lot of people are realizing that this is an opportunity to take a step back and really look forward, and what do we want to create going forward as we get past this unfortunate phase that we're in now. And so, yeah, I think it's really exciting. I think the opportunities for paper and paper-based products and packaging in particular are huge. And so people are really excited about that. We have a sustainability awards program, and we've had that program for a long time. We ran that program this year smack in the middle of COVID. Frankly, I was concerned we were going to have to cancel the program just because of the stresses everybody was under. We did extend the deadline, but we ended up getting way more applications for awards than we had in earlier years in the midst of COVID. And a lot of those applications were for what we call our innovation award. And so people are really excited about creating new ways to make products, make them more sustainable. And the awards process now it's actually kind of more fun looking at some of these products that are coming down the pipe. And so, yeah, so I do think that we are viewing this as an opportunity this time. and companies are working hard to take advantage of that opportunity.
I wonder if that's part consumer sentiments changing. People are willing to maybe pay a little more for a product that has, more recycled material, more use for it, and or seems to be less of an impact on the environment. I mean, that's kind of, I'm just guessing that is what consumers are sort of looking at. But I always wonder how much is that really translated into actual buying, that moves the needle in that direction, right?
Yeah.
Maybe this
Yes.
is. Go ahead.
It's
Sorry,
not
Jerry.
yeah, sorry. This is the wonderful part of Zoom, right?
Right. Yeah, the lag.
So yeah, I mean, I kind of alluded to that earlier. There's a lot of research on the extent to which these desires do translate into greater purchases of sustainable products. But my understanding of the data and the research, more recent research, is that, yeah, this is for sure. This is for real. I mean, this is what certainly young people are interested in. They want to buy products that make them feel good, that they want to buy from companies that they view as making a difference. We see that in terms of in our attempts to find new employees, right? So we realize we have to make this industry an attractive industry for new employees. And one way to do that is show them and demonstrate through our values and our products that we are interested in, really care about sustainability. And so I think you're right. I think consumers generally are definitely more interested in this and are more interested in buying products that meet their value system.
Well, it kind of drives at the point of the increase in award applications, right? Because as you go through the effort of inventing a new product that fits that kind of product class, you really want to be recognized. So you apply to get an award so that you can then advertise on your website or to your your vendors, your customers, that, hey, this one, we got this award because it is an innovative, novel product class, right? Or product thing that we made. Interesting. And I also curious to know, it's become such this sort of sustainability concept within your association. It's pretty significant amount of attention is given to this, and you're going into 2030 to the next level. Are you gonna? Is it looking like everybody wants to raise the bar even further in these areas, or are they even looking for new goals that they're gonna measure, new spots?
So it's a combination. So water, forestry, greenhouse gas reductions, those will stay. But as I said, what will change will be the metrics that we use for those. So they will be looking a little more broadly and moving off just the manufacturing process itself. One area that I haven't touched on that, as you might imagine, we are heavily focused on, and again, these are issues that we bring to the board on a regular basis for updates. As I said, the first time around we did it, and of course we're doing it now for the 2030 goals. So there's the three pillars is environment, social, and economic. Well, the social piece, a lot of people these days call that the quote people part of sustainability. And so with COVID, with the focus and concern in the country these days around racial equity issues, how do you translate that in some meaningful way into some kind of sustanosability commitment for the industry? And that, so that's unfolding in real time, right? I mean, that's a huge challenge. And I think the companies individually are facing that challenge. What do they as a company do? And then the larger question is, what does an association of companies do in this space? And what's the right role for the companies, and what's the right role for the associations? And because this is unfolding in real time, this is something that we are spending a lot of time on. So this is not brand new, but a very new area for goal development. Previously, the way we addressed the social component in the first round was the safety goal, right? We need safe employees. But now, as I said, we're broadening that focus a little bit and trying to really think through what do we do and how do we make contributions in this area that the country is so focused on right now.
Yeah, because I guess you have to be careful about, projecting an image versus being substantive. But what does that really mean? Like, how do you deal with that? Any large company with workforce challenges trying to find qualified people, it's just going to be a difficult thing to do normally. And now you throw in COVID, and then you also got to throw in diversity and inclusion, because you definitely don't want to be seen as somebody who's not, who's just doing a perfunctory, panel or something here and there. If we're talking about the association space, right? Like, how do you get to something where it makes a difference? That's gotta be a huge challenge to figure out. When you call people to talk to them about this, do they usually take your call, or did they get nervous? Like, oh no, Jerry's gonna ask me to do more data collection. Oh man, this is gonna be rough.
Well, luckily, it's a funny quote. Luckily, the people that I would be calling about these issues, right? So what's their job? Their job is to do the same thing for their company that I'm doing for AFPA, right? So they kind of feel my pain, if you would. I mean, we're kind of all in this together. So yeah, so they take my call.
Okay. That it seems like well, every industry, every market is always transforming based on the customer's desires, right? What they're willing to pay for. But it seems like we're at a big inflection point. Obviously, the country is at a big inflection point, and obviously, we have issues that are larger than any one company or any one industry could actually solve. So I think what you guys are doing is a great indicator of a way to get that ball rolling. And it seems like you guys have been doing it for several years. So whatever criticisms you might have out there for not doing it enough, I would counter a little bit. Well, at least they're doing this, which is
Right.
not the case for every industry out there, unfortunately. But I think it's more of a fear of like, well, where do you start, right? And so that's why Jerry, thanks for coming on the show and giving me a little bit of a taste of what it's like to be in your shoes. Can you leave us with something like a good lesson learned of maybe how maybe some smaller groups out there trying to figure out a way to approach this, but what would be something they should just kind of stay focused on as they go through like a multi-year, forecasting of where we could be and getting everybody to agree with that? And I'm just thinking about that would leave me with a few sleepless nights if it was my job.
Yeah, and again, a lot of this depends on where you're starting, right? So as I said, we had a huge leg up because we had been collecting this data. So you have to start somewhere with information and data. And there are different ways to do that reporting. You can make some of it public, you can not, you can have companies submit it one way or the other, but that's a start. And obviously, as I've emphasized, to the extent you can make that a minimal burden and less administrative headache, then that helps. And then you have to make the case, right? So one way we made the case was we had a huge stakeholder. We had a big meeting of all our CEOs in 2009. And we invited stakeholders in, our key customers and others. And our CEOs
sat
directly from the stakeholders.
So Jerry, could you say that one again? Because we just got a lag for some reason.
Yeah, sure. So one way you do it is you let your CEOs hear directly from the customer, from the stakeholders. So we convened a big meeting, our President's Forum meeting that we had every year, and we brought in the stakeholders, customers, other government agencies, environmental groups, to talk directly to our CEOs. And that was huge. I mean, that really was planting the seed that they said to us very directly, you need to tell your story better, but it's not just about telling your story better. You need to have a better story to tell. And so they heard that directly from our stakeholders. And that buy-in at that level was really important. And because you've heard me say, I go back to the board and I give them updates at each board meeting. And ultimately it was the board that signed off on these goals, and they will sign off on the 2030 goals as well. So you need to start, those I would say would be the two key points. You need to get data, and you need to start building the acceptance of the need for this initiative in the companies themselves. And sometimes having outside voices come in and tell you, you really ought to do this if you want to maintain your leadership. That
helps.
That helps.
Give them the extra push. It's not you guys saying it, it's their customers or the industry think tanks around their business.
Exactly.
The last question on this, if looking into 2030, we're, in terms of the data collection process, what if you could wave a magic wand, what would you like to see more of from your industry coming to you, that they may have, or they may have locked up in their, mill management databases that they use?
So this is getting to the challenge around the metrics, right?
Mm.
So we've made a lot of progress on figuring out what is the goal we're heading for, but the metrics and the measurement part is always the tough part. And I think what we are looking for are what I call the so what piece of the story. So it's great that you're practicing sustainable forest management, but so what? What did you accomplish? And how do you measure the fact that there's better and more resilient wildlife habitat? There's better and more resilient forests in the country. How do you measure that? And that part is hard. And there are a lot of people who are working right now to try to figure that out. Or what are called scope 3 emissions for greenhouse gas emissions. In your value chain, what are the emissions that are occurring both before and after you manufacture your product? Measuring that is really hard. And we see there are a lot of people focused on it, people talking about blockchain as a way to start capturing that data and moving it through the system. So, if I had to project 2030, I think there's going to be a lot more of that innovation around collecting and reporting that data and putting it in a format that people can understand it and understand the so what. What did you accomplish with this goal? How many acres ended up being conserved that otherwise wouldn't have? Or how did you positively impact the watershed in which your facility is located? So maybe you planted trees and have created a riparian zone along the banks of the river. What benefit did that create for the aquatic ecosystem upstream and downstream of your facility? So it's going to be those kinds of data challenges. I don't think it's people have that in their files and they're still not sure if they want to share. I think it's just how do you create that data? How do you ensure its integrity?
Right. And it's from data sources that may be outside the property line of the very mill that exists, right? And I guess that's why blockchain kind of pops in here and there. If you could create the payments for certain metrics that you could just electronically record on that distributed ledger, then that would be a way to quickly measure a variety of things that at the transaction spot. But it's complicated. I've been talking about blockchain for several years. It's not the easiest thing to put into practice, but the fact that is, I guess that's the next step. It's easy to collect the data within your own enterprise, but then what are the impacts of the changes you've made? How do we collect that data that are outside of our business? That's the hard part. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
Wow.
Yep, you nailed it.
All right. Well, Jerry, we got an exciting next 10 years. I look forward to seeing some new goals. When do you think you'll come to? That'll be 2021, 2022, when you've settled in the process of deciding that?
It better be 2021 or I'm in trouble.
Okay. Let's get a deadline. Okay. All right. Well, won't take up any more of your time because clearly we need to do this. And I know we could have spoken a little bit more on the impacts of COVID, but I think everybody's heard enough of that. Everybody's exhausted by that, but this is really interesting. Thank you, Jerry. Thank you so much.
My pleasure.
Yeah, let's keep in touch and do this again maybe next year once you guys settle on those next goals. Maybe we can do that.
That'd be great. I enjoyed talking with you. Thanks.
All right. Well, thank you. Take care. And thank you guys for listening. Really appreciate that. Bye, everybody. Until the next time. Bye-bye.
For more episodes of Through the Noise, go to throughthenoise.us.